Hive Fleet Kraken. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and organizations of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we shall be discussing one of the dire threats to the Imperium that come in the bitey Anashi form, an enemy that is not entirely as it seems, nor reacts in recorded and predictable ways. For today, we shall discuss one of the most interesting hive fleets of the Tyranid Onslaught, Hive Fleet Kraken. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Hive Fleet Kraken. For more than 200 years after Hive Fleet Behemoth's rampage, the Imperium was relatively untroubled by the Tyranids. Though several smaller hive fleets passed into the galaxy in that time, they primarily vented their fury on alien worlds, leading many to believe the Tyranid menace was all but spent. Nothing could have been further from the truth. By early year 990, Millennium 41, a new Tyranid invasion had descended upon the Imperium, and it was named Kraken. Where Hive Fleet Behemoth had fought as a single massive wave that advanced and fought as one, Kraken was actually a series of smaller fleets that moved to attack many worlds concurrently. Not only did this compound the Imperium's difficulty in opposing the Hive Fleet, it spread the shadow in the warp tenfold. Whole sectors were silenced simultaneously, isolated by the hive mind's choking influence. Only months after Onslaught had begun, did accounts begin to reach the wider Imperium. Grim tales of entire sectors sown with poisonous spores, of hulking monsters bursting forth from the shadows, ripping and slashing with murderous claws. Reports filtered in of billions of creatures swarming across the face of defenseless worlds, devouring everything in their path. The tendrils of Kraken. Seen on a galactic scale, Hive Fleet Kraken was attacking across a front that covered thousands of light years, making a cohesive defense impossible to mount. The Imperium was forced to concentrate its forces on the most strategically important worlds, while others were evacuated or simply abandoned to their fate. For the first time, the Imperium was exposed to the predatory intelligence of the seemingly bestial race. Kraken employed cunning vanguard tactics that Behemoth had largely eschewed in favor of an overwhelming assault. Previously unseen bioforms struck ahead of the Hive Fleet, assassinating key military and civilian officials while sowing fear and confusion across entire sectors. There were some glimmers of light in the darkness. Several Space Marine chapters endeavored to save those worlds the Imperium had abandoned. Some, such as the Lamenters and the Scythes of the Emperor, paid for their boldness with heavy losses, their once proud chapters reduced to a few scattered remnants, whilst the Knights of Eternity were entirely wiped out. Others carried the battle to the Tyranids in the manner that only Space Marines could, boarding hive ships and blowing them apart from the inside. Yet, no matter the effort the Imperium made, the Tyranids were too many, and they drove ever onwards into the galaxy. Ichar IV. Fortunately for mankind, Hive Fleet Kraken did not remain spread out indefinitely, and many of its tendrils converged on Ichar IV, a hive world that some years earlier had been the site of a gene-stealer infestation. Thousands of clawed attack beasts burst from the underhives in support of the invaders. Defense perimeters were quickly overrun by the scuttling horrors that had lurked patiently in hiding for so long. Ever more Tyranids made planetfall, not merely the termagants and gargoyles common to the vanguard of Hive Fleet Behemoth's assaults, but monstrous exocrines and tyrannofexes by the score. Worse still, giant biotitans now stalked across the surface of the beleaguered planet. Hive Fleet Kraken had descended on Ichar IV with everything at its disposal. Despite its woes, Ichar IV was not yet lost. Forewarned by the previous infestation, Marneus Calgar led the Ultramarines to save the Ichar system, inflicting crushing losses on the Tyranid armada in space, and in the claustrophobic environs of the towering hive cities. Veterans of the First Tyrannic War scoured Ichar IV's hives in a series of close-quarters battles that lasted almost a full year. In a replay of history, Marneus Calgar faced none other than the Swarm Lord, a reincarnation of the same beast that had laid him low on Macragge, during the final battle for Ichar IV. This time, however, it would be Calgar who emerged triumphant, slaying the beast in an epic duel. Without the Swarm Lord to counter Calgar's military strategy, the Ultramarines and their Astra Militarum allies finally cast the Tyranids from the world. Victory had come too late to save Ichar IV, which was now little more than a smoking charnel house. A world sacrificed so that thousands more might endure. Perhaps worse for the Imperium, the hive mind absorbed the Swarm Lord's consciousness again, and having learned from its own death, its next reincarnation would prove the most dangerous yet encountered. The Splinter Fleets. The scattered remnants of the Tyranid attack on Ichar IV fled towards the galactic core, driving well within the defense perimeters drawn against Hive Fleet Kraken. These Splinter Fleets have, if anything, become an even greater threat as they feed upon unsuspecting and ill-defended worlds far from the major war zones. Running battles with the Splinter Fleets have continued for many years since Kraken's passage, draining the galaxy's defenses against later incursions. It is doubtful if the true extent of the devastation caused by the Hive Fleet will ever be known. Splinter Fleets can comprise as few as a dozen Hive ships, but even a dozen bioships are more than capable of overrunning a planet and harvesting its biomass to become a yet greater threat. Some have become so large as to be classified as a new, distinct Hive Fleet. Indeed, Hive Fleet Megalodon is grown from one of Kraken's sundered tendrils and continues to ravage the Imperium to this day. So too does the court of the Nephilim King. A splinter of Hive Fleet Behemoth continue to devour world after world. Doubtless, the Tyranids have learnt much about the inner galaxy's defences from these splinter fleets. Every battle the Tyranids engage in, won or lost, adds to the hive mind's ever-growing understanding of its prey. Was this the true goal all along? Who can say? It is perhaps preferable to believe that the hive mind had this very eventuality planned from the onset, rather than to entertain the only other possibility, that the hive mind has the strategic wit to turn even its defeats into victories elsewhere. The Lurking Menace. An Imperium that had only experienced the sector-smashing battering ram of Hive Fleet Behemoth was caught completely off guard by the next stage of the Tyranid invasion. Where Behemoth hurtled on a direct path towards the galactic core, crushing all in its path with the sheer ferocity of its advance, Hive Fleet Kraken employed a level of cunning and strategy that threw its opponents into terrified confusion. The tentacles of the Kraken attack from multiple sides at once, outflanking and trapping its prey. As the fractured Imperium rushed its navies to defend one sector, another tendril of the Hive Fleet would sweep in to devour unguarded territory. Even now, scattered and greatly reduced in size, the Hive Fleet devours its way through the galaxy, having learned the tactics of its prey and formulating devious adaptations to counter them. Tendrils of the Kraken sweep towards worlds left unstable by gene-steel occult uprisings and sprees of violent slayings, falling upon their vulnerable quarry with predatory cunning. Upon the battlefield, the Kraken's victims are cut apart by flanking maneuvers or scattered as chameleonic horrors rush from hidden lairs into their midst, slicing and tearing with razor-sharp claws. Lictors and Gene Stealers are particularly favoured by the Hive Fleet for their stealth and swiftness. and broods of these monsters will be unleashed in hunting packs, slaughtering commanders and eliminating key threats to the greater swarm. Rarely will the Kraken engage a foe head-on. Instead, its questing tendrils of vanguard organisms will strike and fade, probing for vulnerabilities. Once such a weakness is found, the Hive Fleet will exploit it with ruthless precision, concentrating its swarm to harry and pull enemy formations apart, where one by one they can be picked off and devoured. End quote. Now I am a Hive Fleet Leviathan player, as I liked the colour scheme. But the Tyranids have such a wealth of diversity in their fleets that make facing even an identical army of differing hives a totally new and unpredictable experience. It allows for greater fun in the armies, and the games become far less predictable. Now Hive Fleet Kraken has the ability to not only advance faster than any other Hive Fleet, but also to be able to extricate units from combat, permitting all of their bastard bugs to really go to town, then to be able to simply charge back into the fray again with exactly the same unit. Terrifying, because it gives so much maneuverability to the army. It is these little tweaks that really do breathe new life into a range of models, meaning like Marines, Eldar, or most other armies, you can utterly change the way they are used by painting them a different colour. Which is pretty clever really, as it means the same person can purchase the same models again and again, never moving out of their particular wheelhouse, and simply paint them in a new scheme. Now my only request for Tyranids would be a range of new heroes, or HQs at the least, and possibly even some conversion packs to make Hive Fleet specific armies and unique monsters for said fleet. We can always dream, I guess. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to Hive Fleet Kraken. If so, then please consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. If you see the worth in what we are doing, then do also consider joining our Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.